Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're digging into a really big comparison, the US and China, the two big superpowers.
Right, but we're not just talking GDP numbers or, military spending here.
No, exactly. We're looking at how these nations sort of fundamentally work, their operating systems, if you like, and what happens when those systems clash with what their own citizens expect.
Yeah, and our guide for this is the analyst Dan Wang. He spent a lot of time living and working in China, and his insights are, well, they're pretty sharp.
He gives us this framework that cuts through a lot of the usual noise. He calls China the engineering state, really centralized, versus America, which he sees as this decentralized, almost bureaucratic, lawyerly society.
And that's our mission today, really. First, to unpack what he means by that. Look at the strengths of China's approach, but also the friction in the U.S. system.
And second, and this is crucial, we need to look at the human side. What happens in China because of this system? There's this quiet exodus happening, mostly young, creative people leaving.
The run phenomenon. Run, leave.
Yeah. Exactly. And the twist is maybe the next big wave of innovation doesn't come from the state's big plans, but actually from this disillusionment, from the people who've stepped outside.
And Wang's whole analysis starts from a really personal place, doesn't it? His own parents.
Yeah, he talks about them emigrating from China, and by leaving, they missed out on potentially huge wealth. They weren't part of China's luckiest generation, he calls them.
Those born after 1960, urban, got property after the 2000s boom, massive wealth creation.
Right, so they missed that. But what they gained, living a suburban life near Philly, he calls enviable.
That's the tension right there. Stability and maybe freedom versus state-driven opportunity. It sets the stage for everything else he observes.
Okay, so let's dive into that core idea. China as the engineering state. What does that actually mean in practice?
Wang defines it by its speed, its efficiency. It's about tackling problems, physical ones, social ones, with a sledgehammer. Very pragmatic.
Sledgehammer. I like that. It sounds very direct. Top down. Get it done now.
Exactly. Resources mobilized quickly. Clear goals. Think about the early days of COVID back in 2020.
Oh, yeah. Chaos everywhere else. Trying to get masks, ventilators.
Right. But Chinese manufacturers, they just switched gears almost instantly. Wang mentions one guy who was just amazed at how slow Western companies were moving.
Because the main goal in China suddenly became just make money, right? Whatever it takes.
Yeah, making money was suddenly their core competence, even if they made, toys the week before. And the result was this incredible industrial surge.
The numbers were wild.
70 billion masks, nearly 100,000 ventilators, exported between March and May 2020. They just fixed the problem, standardized, and flooded the market.
While others were still, trying to find the light switch.
Pretty much. And it's not just crises. That sledgehammer shapes the whole landscape. Wang talks about this bike ride he took.
Ah, yes, between Gaiyang and Chongqing.
Right. And this is in China's fourth poorest province, remember. But the infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, rail lines, he says they were way better than what you'd find in, say, California or New York.
Wealthier places in the U.S.
Much wealthier. That's the engineering state delivering tangible physical stuff. Fast.
Okay, so that's the sledgehammer. Powerful, fast. But then you have the other side, the U.S. system.
The lawyerly society. And here, Wang says, America brings a gavel to block almost everything, good and bad.
Blocking, good and bad. That sounds like built-in friction. Why does he characterize the U.S. like that? What's the lawyerly part mean?
It's about complexity, process, delegation. Lots and lots of delegation. Think about how the U.S. rolled out vaccines.
Oh, don't remind me. It felt painfully slow.
Well, Wang points to the structure.
Yeah.
Responsibility got passed down through 10 layers. Federal government, states, counties, hospitals, all the way down to this tiny group of totally overworked nurses.
10 layers deep. So it sounds like a system designed to avoid blame rather than, actually deliver something quickly.
That's a good way to put it. Maximum liability reduction. Minimum speed. If someone down the chain had a great idea, good luck getting it approved back up those 10 layers.
Too risky. The gavel is always hovering, ready to smack down mistakes. Or maybe just anything that moves too fast.
Exactly. And you see this in how the U.S. competes, too, geopolitically. Wang argues the U.S. often defaults to legal tools, abstract stuff.
Instead of just building better things.
Right. Look at the trade war, the tech fight.
Yeah.
The U.S. response. Lots of terrorists designing this ever more exquisite sanctions regime. It's using legal weapons, the gavel, to restrict China.
Rather than focusing all its energy on, say, out-innovating them directly, building a better alternative.
That's the contrast he draws. China's building cars, power plants, trains. The U.S. is often building legal cases and regulatory hurdles.
So you have to ask, what's the trade-off? What's the cost of all that American friction, that focus on litigation?
Dynamism, potentially. Velocity. The U.S. system, with all its checks and balances, might protect individual rights better in some ways, sure. But big national projects, rapid mobilization, makes those incredibly hard.
Okay, that contrast is really clear, but it leads perfectly to the next point. The engineering state is great at building things, physical stuff. What happens when it turns that same sledgehammer approach onto society, onto culture?
Ah, yes. And that's where we see the quiet shattering Wang talks about, a whole generation's hopes kinda crumbling. This is the Rin phenomenon you mentioned earlier. People wanting to run, to leave.
And who exactly is leaving? It's not random people.
No, not at all. It's mostly young Chinese, 20s, grew up in the big cities, went to the best universities. These are the people you'd think the engineering state would desperately want to keep, the creative engine.
The talent pool. So why are they leaving? What hopes got shattered?
They basically grew up expecting, three main things. Meaningful careers that use their education, more political freedom, or at least openness, and deeper integration with the rest of the world.
And those expectations just haven't panned out.
They've curdled, as Wang puts it, over the past decade, really. The jobs, often super stressful or surprisingly menial, not what they studied for. Political space, that's tightened up massively. Free expression is much harder.
And the overall direction has shifted, hasn't it? Less focus purely on economic growth.
Definitely. The promise to the older generation was basically get rich. But under Xi Jinping, the emphasis has changed. More focus on party control, on national security, on these
big slogans.
Yeah, Wang calls them vague slogans like common prosperity or the great rejuvenation. For young people, common prosperity doesn't sound like everyone getting richer together.
It sounds more like leveling down, bringing the successful back to the pack.
Exactly. It feels like maybe the ceiling for individual ambition is being lowered. It's unsettling for them.
There's a quote in the sources that really captures that feeling. Something like China feels like a space in which the ceiling keeps getting lower.
Yes. And that to stay, you have to walk around with our heads lowered and our backs hunched. It's less about money, more about this lack of, intellectual breathing room, future potential.
It's a powerful image. So this disillusionment leads to a real exodus. Where are they going?
It's interesting. They seem to be sorting themselves based on what they're looking for now.
How so?
Well, the ambitious ones, the entrepreneurial types, they're often heading to Singapore. If you've got money and means, maybe Japan.
Okay.
But then there's this other group, maybe the most interesting one, the ones Wang calls the slackers, the free spirits, kids who want to chill. They're ending up in places like Chiang Mai in Thailand.
That's fascinating. China's system turns out these super disciplined, highly educated graduates.
Top of their class, globally competitive.
And they flee to become slackers in Thailand.
It tells you something, right? Maybe what they really crave is just freedom, space to think, which is exactly what the rigid, execution-focused engineering state struggles to provide.
So, this brings us back to innovation. If the best and brightest are leaving, or at least feeling alienated, where do the next big ideas come from? Does the state just fund them into existence?
Wang suggests maybe not. He says, look outside the official system. Look at these communities forming in places like Chiang Mai. They're outside the party's direct control. They're reacting to the censorship, the economic slowdown.
What are they actually doing there?
They're looking for new ideas, trying things out. There's apparently this vibe, almost like, 90s California counterculture.
Really? Experimenting with what?
New tech, philosophy, trying to build new kinds of communities, figure out different ways forward. It might sound a bit naive, maybe, but it's driven by a real need.
And this is where technology that resists control becomes important, like crypto.
Exactly. We in the West often see cryptocurrency as, speculative bubbles or solutions looking for problems.
Yeah, that phrase gets used a lot.
But Wang makes the point that for people living under tight state controls, like in China, crypto has real practical value.
How so? What problems does it solve for them?
Think about it. Strict capital controls, it's hard to move money out. Pervasive digital surveillance. Censorship. Crypto offers potential tools for, capital flight, for more private communication, for opting out of state-run financial systems. It's not just speculation for them. It could be a tool for survival, almost political necessity.
So the innovation isn't just the tech itself, but how it's used out of necessity.
Precisely. And Wang's hopeful, long-term, He says maybe this diaspora group won't be founding billion-dollar unicorns tomorrow, but given enough time, he thinks, they will build something more interesting than coins.
Creative acts born out of exile.
Yeah, creative acts that might actually benefit the China they eventually inherit, even if they have to start outside its borders.
So if we pull this all together, the picture is pretty stark. You've got this incredibly capable engineering state.
Brilliant at building physical things, infrastructure, factories, cities, unmatched speed.
But it seems to fail badly when it comes to, like, social engineering, cultural creation, storytelling.
Totally. It struggles to generate culture that travels well, that resonates globally. Look at the influence of Japan or South Korea culturally compared to China. Despite all its economic power, China punches way below its weight culturally.
And that failure, that rigidity, is pushing away the very people who could maybe fix that, its own creative youth.
That seems to be the core tension. The party tightens control, focuses on security and slogans, and alienates the talent it needs for dynamism. China got rich, but Wang suggests it's become culturally quite stunted.
Which leaves us with a really provocative thought, doesn't it, for you, the listener, to consider. Is the real measure of a nation's long-term power not just its GDP or its military, but its ability to generate free thought, to foster cultural creation, even if that happens on the margins or in exile?
Because pushing boundaries, thinking differently, that seems to require the exact opposite of a sledgehammer. And it needs slack, space, freedom, the very things the engineering state seems driven to eliminate. So yeah, you're left wondering if the dynamism China wants can only come from the free spirits it's pushing away.
Something to think about. That relationship between political control, individual hopes, and where genuine future-shaping innovation actually comes from. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.